Before you scroll away, slow down for 1 second and really feel what has been happening inside you lately. Something has changed. You know it. Maybe you could not explain it clearly. Maybe you tried to brush it off. Maybe you told yourself it was just another passing thought, but deep down it kept returning. That sudden pull in your chest, that person appearing in your mind at random times, that strange pressure in the silence. It is not here for no reason. And if you have been feeling this more strongly than ever, then stay with me, because what you are sensing may be the beginning of a real shift. Not a fantasy, not a story you made up to comfort yourself. A shift. Something is moving behind the scenes, and your deeper self is picking it up before your mind can put it into words. There are moments in life when nothing seems to happen on the outside, yet everything is changing underneath. This feels like one of those moments, so take a breath, let the noise fall back. Listen closely, because what is happening between you and this person may be closer to a turning point than you think, and the signs are already reaching you before the action does. You may have noticed it in quiet moments the most, a tight feeling in your chest without warning, a memory landing in your mind out of nowhere, a restless energy humming under your normal routine like something unseen is trying to get your attention. That feeling is not random. It is not something to laugh off too quickly. Your deeper self often notices movement long before your thoughts catch up. It reads what words cannot touch. It senses what the surface tries to hide. That is why you can feel that something is changing with this person even before there is a clear message, a clear sign, or a clear explanation. That soft pull inside you, the one you may have called wishful thinking too many times, may actually be your inner signal telling you this connection still has unfinished meaning. And that matters, because just before something changes in the outer world, pressure usually starts building inside first. Quietly, steadily, almost like emotional weather shifting before the storm is visible. That is where you are now. Openings are beginning to form where there used to be silence. Tiny cracks are appearing in old walls. And if this already matches what you have been feeling, stay to the end, because the next part explains why the energy has become so strong now. Your place in this person's heart did not disappear the way you feared it might. While you were carrying your own questions, trying to make peace with the silence and learning how to live with uncertainty, something was slowly changing inside them. The walls they built from fear, pride, confusion, and the need to stay in control did not stay solid forever. They have been weakening, quietly, bit by bit. The strong feeling you have sensed lately may be there because they are now holding emotions they can no longer keep buried so easily. Truth has a way of rising, even when someone is not ready, even when they resist it. The bond between two people does not always end just because time passes or distance grows. Some connections continue working below the surface. To understand why this is happening now, think about what they may have been going through during the quiet time between you. They kept space. They stayed in the background. They tried to act fine. But inside, they may have been caught between fear and a pull toward you they could not fully shut down. On the outside, they may have looked calm, in control, maybe even moved on, but looks can hide a lot. And sometimes the strongest emotions live behind the quietest faces. As time passed, the mask became heavier for them to wear. What looked stable from the outside may have been hiding a deep inner struggle no one else could see. Night after night, they likely argued with themselves. They used logic to explain the distance. They told themselves stepping back was smart, safer, easier. They may have tried to convince themselves that leaving things alone was the mature choice. But not every distance is caused by a lack of feeling. Sometimes people step away because they feel too much and do not know how to carry it. Being deeply seen by another person can shake someone more than they expect. It can bring up fear of losing control, fear of being hurt, fear of needing someone. Yet, when a connection reaches a deep part of a person, ordinary reasoning starts losing its power. Slowly, their defenses began to wear thin. Life without you started feeling flatter, dimmer, like something important was missing even if they could not name it clearly. A new awareness began growing inside them. They started seeing that the guarded version of themselves was not their full truth. It was a role, a shield, and it no longer fit the same way. Every attempt to move farther away kept getting interrupted by something that pulled their thoughts back to you, not just as a memory, but as something tied to who they really are. They may have tried to drown those feelings in noise, work, people, distractions, new routines, busy days that looked full from the outside. But even then, comparisons kept appearing. Thoughts they would never say out loud kept drifting back to you. All of this built quietly beneath the surface, and now the pressure is becoming harder for them to escape. A person can only avoid the truth for so long before their deeper self gets tired of pretending. That may be exactly where they are now. The life they built to push their feelings away is no longer numbing them the way it once did. They may have believed that enough distance would weaken the bond, enough silence would soften your presence in their heart, enough time would slowly make all of this disappear. But the opposite happened. The longer the space lasted, the clearer their emotions became. Instead of fading, you became stronger in their inner world. They began noticing you in small, empty spaces, in the quiet before sleep, in passing moments that should have meant nothing, in places filled with noise where they still felt strangely alone. And that is when understanding started to take root. They began to realize this was not a shallow connection, not a short spark, not something easy to replace. It touched parts of them no one else had reached, and once a person truly sees that, it changes how they see everything. There have likely been nights when they sat alone and remembered moments you may have forgotten already. Small conversations, a look, a calm moment. The way your presence made hard things feel lighter without you even trying. Those details have taken on new meaning in their memory. Emotional safety is rare. Being with someone and not needing to pretend is rare. Feeling understood without having to explain every piece of yourself is rare. And the empty space left by that kind of bond is not easy to fill. They may have looked for pieces of it elsewhere. They may have tried to convince themselves that something similar could be found again. But every comparison only made your importance clearer. At first, pride told them they could move on without a problem, that they were stronger than the feeling, that they had everything under control. But pride has limits. Eventually, it runs into truth. And for them, that point may have arrived. They are beginning to understand that meeting you changed something in them in a lasting way. It was not temporary. It was not casual. It was not something they can just decide to erase. And while all this has been changing inside them, something important has also been changing inside you. Stay with this part, because this is where the whole energy starts shifting in a powerful way. Even if you still think about them, even if part of you still wonders what happens next, you are not standing in the same emotional place anymore. Something inside you has grown stronger, calmer, wiser. You have learned what it feels like to keep reaching towards someone who is not fully meeting you in the middle. You have felt the heaviness of carrying too much of the emotional weight alone. And through the confusion, through the waiting, through the long silence, you slowly started bringing your energy back home to yourself. That change matters more than it seems, because when you stopped stretching yourself thin, when you stopped making yourself endlessly available in the hope that one more effort would finally change everything, the whole dynamic began to shift. There was a time when your emotions were pointed mostly outward. Your peace rose and fell based on whether they replied, whether they appeared, whether they noticed you. But that pattern began to exhaust you, not in a dramatic way, in a deep way. Your soul got tired, and little by little you turned your attention back inward, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring for yourself with equal honesty. That created a real change in the energy. And sometimes, the moment you stop chasing is the moment the silence starts speaking the loudest to the other person. When someone is always pouring their focus outward, their presence can start to blend into the background. It becomes something expected, something quietly relied on. But when that energy turns inward and becomes calm, grounded, and no longer desperate for an answer, its absence becomes impossible to ignore. That is what this person may be feeling now. They are noticing your distance in a new way because your energy no longer carries the same urgency. You are not pulling in the same way. You are not reaching with the same need. And instead of making the connection weaker, that shift may be forcing them to face what they have truly been missing. This is why they may have become more restless lately. Some part of them can feel that you are changing. The version of you who waited, overgave, and made themselves smaller is fading. In its place is someone more centered, more settled, more aware of their own worth. And that realization creates urgency, because time no longer feels endless when someone senses they may actually lose what they once took for granted. People often do not understand the value of a connection until they spend enough time living without it. Now they may be sitting with the weight of every delay, every choice made from fear, every feeling pushed down too long. And for the first time, they may not be able to hide from that truth so easily. This time apart has changed both of you, but not in the same way. It helped you remember your own value without needing their approval to prove it. It gave them the experience of moving through life without the warmth, depth, and emotional honesty you brought into it. That is why what you are feeling now carries weight. Hidden things are coming up. Avoided truths are rising. They are beginning to understand that they do not only miss your attention, they miss your energy, your depth, your calm, the way they felt around you, the way they could drop their guard in ways they did not even fully notice back then. That realization has become too steady to brush aside as a passing mood. It follows them into normal moments, a smell, a song, a time of day, a random word, a place filled with other people. And suddenly, there you are again, in their mind. At first, that may have made them uncomfortable because they wanted to believe they controlled their inner world completely. They wanted to decide when to think of you and when not to. But deep emotional truth does not obey rules like that. The stronger the bond, the more naturally it rises on its own. And now they may be reaching the point where resisting the connection takes more energy than simply facing it. That is a major inner change. And once that change begins, silence becomes much harder to maintain. They are likely looking back now with different eyes. They may remember the times you tried to understand them while they stayed closed, the patience you gave, the steadiness you offered, the quiet love that may have felt ordinary back then because it was consistently there. Real love often looks simple while you have it. People do not always see how rare it is until it is gone. That may be what is happening now. They are seeing that what you offered was not common. The honesty, the care, the emotional depth, the ease of being with someone who allowed them to be fully themselves. They may have searched for pieces of that feeling in other places and found only surface versions that faded quickly. Nothing matched. Nothing held the same weight. And that keeps making your value clearer in their heart. There may have been nights when they tried hard to move on, only for their thoughts to circle back to you before the night was over. Times when they tried to cut the emotional thread and ended up feeling it even more strongly after. This happens because what existed between you did not live only on the surface. Something deep in them recognized something real in you, and that kind of recognition does not disappear just because someone wishes it would. It lingers, it deepens, it waits. Listen closely here, because this may be the very reason you have felt such strong movement in the silence. They can feel the difference in you now, even if nothing has been said directly. They sense that you are no longer following them emotionally the way you once did. They notice that you have become more balanced inside yourself, less shaken by whether they respond, less dependent on their attention to feel okay. And strangely, that has only intensified their awareness of you. When someone stops forcing love and returns to themselves, their energy changes. It becomes calm, clear, strong. In that calm, the other person is left alone with their own feelings without the old distraction of your urgency covering the truth. Their mind keeps circling back to this bond. Their emotions will not let them stay comfortably numb anymore. And the truth is getting harder to deny. You matter to them. Not lightly, not casually. In a way that has changed how they experience closeness itself. That kind of realization is unsettling for someone who has spent a long time trying to stay guarded. Because once you admit how much someone means to you, you also have to face the risk of openness, the risk of honesty, and the risk of being hurt. Fear has guided them for a long time. Fear of loss, fear of surrender, fear of being fully seen. But fear has limits. And when avoiding the truth becomes heavier than speaking it, a person starts moving toward change, whether they plan to or not. The silence between you may no longer feel empty to them. It may feel loud, heavy, pressed full of everything they did not say. Every day they stay disconnected. The awareness inside them may grow stronger. Every attempt to push the feeling down creates more pressure instead of relief. That is why the energy you have been sensing has likely felt so intense. Something in them is preparing for change, not a forced performance, not a rushed move made for appearance. A real emotional shift, the kind that changes how a person understands themselves. They are beginning to realize that losing you would not only mean losing a person they care about, it would mean losing a part of themselves they only discovered through this bond. That kind of truth changes people deeply. Whether they have shown it yet or not, their heart may be moving toward a moment where silence can no longer hold. The more they try to create distance, the more your absence seems to stand in front of them. This has likely created an inner conflict. One part still wants safety, one part still wants the walls, but another part keeps imagining what would happen if they reached out. What would they say? How would you respond? Is it too late? Would the door still be open? Those questions do not leave easily once they begin. And questions like that often appear just before action begins to form. There may be moments when they come very close to sending a message, very close to breaking the silence. The pressure rises. The words nearly come forward. Then fear steps in at the last second and pulls them back. But that fear may not be holding the same power it once did. Slowly, steadily, day by day, emotional truth is becoming heavier than old protection. The part of them that worked so hard to stay separate is starting to weaken. Under all the resistance, they likely already know the truth. No one else has touched them in quite the same way. No one else brought that same mix of emotional depth, recognition, comfort, and being understood without performance. That knowledge has changed everything. What once felt uncertain now feels important. What they once kept at a distance now feels impossible to ignore. What they once questioned is becoming clearer every day. And clarity creates movement. It may not happen in a perfect straight line. There can still be hesitation. There can still be pauses. There can still be one more night of overthinking. But something essential has already shifted. They are not standing outside this feeling anymore, deciding whether to enter it. They are already inside it. They feel it fully. And once a person reaches that point, silence becomes harder and harder to keep without breaking under its own weight. Both of you have grown through this, and because of that, the old pattern cannot continue forever in the same way. Something more honest is trying to rise. All the silence, all the thought, all the emotional pressure that has been building has created a moment where something has to move. Real truth cannot stay buried forever. Eventually, it finds a voice, an action, a message, a confession, or at least a visible shift in behavior. Something inside them may have reached the point where holding everything in is no longer possible. The silence that once felt safe now feels lonely. The distance they created to protect themselves now feels colder than honesty would. This is often the stage right before real change. For a long time, they may have believed avoidance would let the bond fade on its own. That if they stayed guarded long enough, the feelings would lose strength naturally. But each attempt to disconnect only showed them how deeply rooted this connection really is. They are standing in front of something they cannot simply walk away from unchanged. You altered how they understand closeness. You changed the shape of their inner world. And once someone realizes that another person has permanently shifted how they experience love, they cannot truly go back to being the same as before. That is not a small realization. That is a waking up, and waking up changes everything that comes after. They are beginning to see that the peace they wanted was never going to come from running. It was only ever going to come from honesty. That is the truth they have resisted for a long time, and now it may be becoming impossible to outrun. There are likely moments now when they feel very near to reaching out. Moments when the inner pressure becomes so strong that the silence almost opens by itself. They imagine conversations. They rehearse words. They feel fear losing ground to the deeper fear of losing you for real. Yes, patience may still be needed. Intense feelings do not always move in clean steps, but something genuine is unfolding under the surface as their walls continue to come down. This connection feels like it is approaching a turning point, one built not on fantasy, but on emotional truth, becoming too powerful to keep buried. And still, the deepest lesson in all of this was never only about what they would do next. It was also about you. About you remembering your worth so clearly that no silence could erase it. The moment you stopped abandoning yourself in order to love someone else, the whole energy changed. You became stronger, softer in the right ways, less afraid, more whole. And that inner return may be the very thing forcing this person to finally face what your absence truly means. So trust what you have been sensing beneath the quiet. You are not imagining every bit of this. Something real may be moving. One person learning they cannot keep running forever. The other learning how to love without losing themselves. That is powerful. And whatever happens next, hold on to this truth above all else. Your wholeness does not begin the day someone finally chooses you. It does not begin when the silence ends. It does not depend on perfect timing, perfect words, or instant answers. It began the moment you turned back toward yourself and stopped leaving your own heart behind. That kind of healing changes everything that follows. Sometimes the silence before something meaningful is not empty at all. Sometimes it is the season where the deepest growth is taking place in both people at once, hidden below the surface until the moment it can no longer stay hidden. If this reached you at the right time, hold on to it. Let it settle. And if part of you already feels that a shift is close, do not ignore that inner knowing. Stay open, but stay grounded. Stay soft, but stay true to yourself. Because whatever the next step is, you are no longer standing in the same place you were before, and that alone has already changed the story.